Hello and welcome to this 6 Seconds Live, where today we are talking about belonging in teams. My name is David Corcoran and I am the EQ Business Advisor here at 6 Seconds Europe. And it is my pleasure today to welcome our very special guest, a preferred partner with 6 Seconds, Marina Lumley. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, nice to be here.
Wonderful to have you here. And just to tell those who are watching on to this episode, I'd like you to share with us just a little bit about your background as an executive and team coach.
Sure. So I've actually been in business for a long time now, actually, over 25 years. And my first career was in marketing communications, and I was a deputy MD before I changed tack. And the reason why I changed tack was because I was more interested in how people operated within the organizational environment, what drove difficult people to get away with stuff, why some people never got to be heard, why I found working sometimes really difficult and challenging. And I wanted to unpick that and help organizations perform better and help people thrive in the organizations they were in. So my second career, which is another decade or so long, is all about working with leaders and teams and cultures and helping create positive behavior change so that people, teams, and organizations can be the best they can, not for pure fun, but so that they can help their organizations thrive and so that they can be personally successful and satisfied at the same time. So a few years ago, I did a coaching qualification. I qualified. I have a master's in coaching. I'm also an EQ practitioner, preferred partner of 6 Seconds. And so I work with groups of leaders. I work with individual leaders, and I coach C-suite executives. And I help anyone really who wants to do something different with themselves or with the team that they're in.
Wonderful, wonderful. And are you working across Europe yourself then as well in different locations? You're based in the UK?
Yeah, I'm based in Wimbledon. If anyone knows the tennis, I'm around the corner from the tennis. There are no barriers to where I work. Most of my clients tend to have a hub in the UK, but I coach people in the US, in Dubai. It really is just making sure the time works more than anything.
Of course. Yeah, wonderful. Great. So leadership, teams and cultures, and that's what we want to think a little bit about today. So we're living in this time of multiple crises, polarization, isolation, and really sustainable opportunities and possibilities for people as well as communities maybe are changing, maybe deteriorating, maybe increasing. And today our topic is belonging. And in particular, it's our theme for the moment across 6 Seconds globally. But I'd love to ask you first about what does belonging itself as a term mean to you, Marina?
Yeah. Well, I've been asked that by L&D professionals and HR, and how to build belonging in organizations. That's been a brief that has come my way. But actually, for me, belonging is about belonging to yourself first and foremost, and having enough connection to oneself to bring who you are into play. So, and because I work with a lot of different organizations, I don't belong to a company. Say they don't belong to me. I belong to myself. And so my goal is really to bring my authenticity, my best me, my boundaried me, to my valued me, into play, imperfectly, and always trying to learn, but to bring that into everything I do. And I would say that could be or should be the goal for all of us. You have to first belong to yourself before you can belong to others, and belonging in a team or belonging in an organization.
And I guess that comes with a sense of awareness of yourself then too, as you mentioned before, some lovely values around what it is for you to bring, and connection. You mentioned connecting to yourself.
Yeah,
Is the key there.
Yeah, belonging is a nice buzzword at the moment, but I think you could pare it down to connection. I think
Mm.
it is about connecting. We are tribal. We through the ages we are designed and drawn to be in groups and
Mm.
to be connected to others and seek that connection.
Yeah.
So it's in us. We want it,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we look for it. Um, but I think we're more able to connect with others and to connect with teams and places in which we work if we've worked ourselves out. And
Mm.
so a lot of my work is taking a step back to help people to do that. So, for example, and it doesn't come necessarily very quickly, but what I've learned about myself is that curiosity and courage and clarity are
Mm-hmm.
really important values to me, and I feel better when I'm able to live my life with those playing out, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel more uncomfortable and more regretful if I've bypassed those values or ignored them.
Mm.
So yeah, and I think if you think about it in the team context, it's more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people
Mm-hmm.
all all trying to belong to themselves, hopefully, but
Mm-hmm.
in a team. And so I guess what it's not is fitting in.
Mm.
And I don't like the word culture fit.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests amending oneself in order to become okay here, as
Mm.
opposed to culture add,
Mm-hmm.
which is bringing my uniqueness into play
Yeah.
to create more than there was before
Mm-hmm.
through all that I am. So I think a powerful thing for a team is to invite the whole person in
Mm-hmm.
and to celebrate that. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean let anyone get away with anything because, hey,
Mm-hmm.
that's their uniqueness, so put up with it. That doesn't mean that.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I think when you've built that connection, you can be tougher on each other. You can give each other more rigorous feedback. You can
Mm-hmm.
hold each other to account more,
Mm.
express boundaries and say, this isn't okay. This is okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not about accepting warts and all. It's about accepting that every individual has their voice, has their opinions, and has their right to contribute.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is what I would say are um, important aspects, I guess.
Yeah. It sounds like if you're in a space where you can give that feedback, receive that feedback, and bring your diverse self, that there has to be an element of trust in that as well. Do you feel that that's also a central theme that maybe we're either it's changing or we're losing a sense of?
I think trust and psychological safety go hand in hand and are um, important constructs to create in organizational life.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be created. They don't just happen by accident.
Mm-hmm.
And they can be, it's a bit like a bank account. You can make deposits and withdrawals into both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, certainly in my experience, it's not something that you achieve overnight. It's something you work at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everyone has to be in. You can't be waiting
Mm.
for trust to form before I'm in. So
Right.
it is a bit chicken and egg.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's part of the challenge
Mm.
in the team setting, because some people will dig in quickly and
Yes.
begin, and others are waiting. And
To
that's
be
that's
told. Yeah.
yeah, to feel comfortable, and
Mm.
they're holding back part of themselves. So I think creating a dynamic environment where those aspects are consciously built in teams
Mm-hmm.
is really important. And I'm not sure you can get to belonging without trust and psychological safety.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and cycling back there, you mentioned too that connection to self. It's about trusting ourselves too, in a way, what we bring and how we bring it to also open that door a
Yeah.
little bit.
And I mean, if anyone is listening to this now or later, there's a very simple question you can ask of yourself, which is, if I go into a new situation with someone, do I start trusting them and it's either eroded or built, or do I start without trust and I look for signs of whether I can build that trust and whether it's built?
Interesting.
And I've probably asked a couple of hundred people that question over the years, and
Yeah.
it's split down the middle.
Is it? Okay.
And that just shows you that we're different.
Yeah.
Our starting point is different.
Yeah.
And
Wonderful.
and how do we marry the two together
Yeah.
when that is a belief for one person is, I'll start to trust it,
Mm.
and then I'll see if it builds or dissipates, whereas someone else is waiting.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's you, David? Are you a trust
Mm.
first, or
I
are you?
am.
Yeah, so am
Yeah.
I. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as a coach, as well, that when you come into that coaching space or a facilitating environment, you want to be able to say, right, I'm here and I'm open, I'm vulnerable, I want to connect. And I found that in my years of training and coaching and English classes and things that I've taught, that when I can provide that, then it sets up that sort of less anxiety for my space. But I love hearing that that's only 50% of the population, because then, of course, there are situations where you've, even as a coach, then you say, well, okay, I really have to show this person that they can trust me. Maybe
Yeah.
even say, and then there's some phrasing and some other things that come
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
trust is a mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So trust is about a belief system. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a choice. It's a
Yeah.
deep-rooted choice,
Yeah.
and that will have come from the lived experiences and the interpretations of the experiences we had in our childhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we are what we are the interpretation of what we experienced in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we're having to test our models, our mental models that we have in our heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a fascinating world. I did put my computer on silent, no alert that it's not playing ball. So
It's not
apologies.
playing ball. We can't trust your computer, but we can trust you. So
Oh, I think
that's wonderful.
well, to a point, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? I think I'd add something else here, which is to be in a team,
Mhm.
to belong to a team, to feel valued and connected to the team, you have to be able to be vulnerable.
Mm.
You can't really be protecting yourself from danger.
Mm.
You have to be able to take the risk of not being able to control everything,
Mhm.
not being able to know what people are going to think and feel in advance of you speaking up, not
Mm.
being able to control the outcome, but
Yeah.
being able to bring your own essence in,
Mhm.
even if you
Mm.
don't know how it's going to land.
Yeah.
So it's not a superficial thing. And
Mhm.
I think that's where I get a bit frustrated, is when organizations create very transactional solutions, which they're not
Mhm.
really, for how to do these things. They're like, let's
Mhm.
tackle it at a surface level. Let's not go deep because it could be a bit scary.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think they're very effective tactics.
Tactics. Yeah. And have you noticed, I'd like to ask you about this period of COVID that we've had and hybrid work. It's really changed the landscape to be able to connect and perhaps even be vulnerable. When we worked in physical places, we would go in as coaches, or I would go in as a coach and do some English training with groups and things. You can meet the people, you can be physically closer. You can build that sense of trust and connection in the beginning of a session. But have you found any differences yourself with working with companies around hybrid?
I First of all, I think it's it's totally unfortunate what COVID is and what it's, you know, the huge negatives from COVID. But putting those almost to one side for a moment, it's been the best experiment that we would never have ever embarked upon so wholeheartedly without. And so I'm really in awe of the opportunity everybody has. Everybody within reason, actually, because there are some people who don't have the luxury of working from home because their job is only able to be done in the physical environment.
Yeah.
We mustn't forget that. But I think it's been the most magnificent experiment, and we're still in the middle of it. We're still right slap bang in the middle. And I do think it's allowed us, given us permission to look at our entire lives and recognize the importance of living our whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get this quote right, but someone said it to me the other day. The life you lead today is the life you're leading. You can't get it right later. You're in it now.
Yeah.
So all those people who are waiting to get it right, waiting to find the balance, putting it off, that's a fallacy. You're here now. You have to get it right now.
Yeah.
I think there's a big opportunity for getting it righter than we used to.
Yeah.
And I think it's allowing some of us to belong to more things. So I think the organizational construct could well suffer.
Yeah.
Because people have the ability to belong to different things in a different way.
Yeah. Different teams.
Very different. And the, you know, the way you can learn now, certainly I do some physical teaching, which is now online, not face to face. And I now teach people from around the world, not just from London and the Southeast, because they're the ones that could get to the room.
Yeah.
So I think there's much more advantage than disadvantage to this, but we're right in the middle.
In the middle.
We're right in the middle.
And so when we think of the trust and the building of trust and belonging connection, do you find it just as easy in a hybrid environment as you would have or have done in a face-to-face environment? Or have you noticed any differences either for yourself or for those who you're connecting with?
There are huge differences. And for me, I'm very sensitized to the nuances. And I pay attention to and try to notice what I can do differently, what I can do better, what might be worse. And I give myself as options to mess it up a bit. And I think that's really important, to be reflective of the experiences that we're having. So I love face-to-face. But as a coach, I find it really beneficial to spend some time face-to-face with a client and some time behind the screen.
Yeah.
Because when you're behind the screen, you can desensitize a bit. I can make notes more easily. There's a different kind of structure. When I'm face to face, it can flow in a different way. And I'm really talking personally here, not about other coaches and how they coach. When you're with a group of people, a team, it's brilliant to be able to get them in a room and be able to stand up and move. And I can notice someone's feet are bouncing under the table. And I can say, what are your feet telling you?
Yeah.
Well, I can't see their feet on a screen.
No.
I can feel someone's intake of breath in a room. I can feel them hold their breath. I can't see that on a screen.
Yeah.
And when we're in a team dynamic, we've got the opportunity to see those things when we're in the room. So I think we should be much more appreciative of all the mechanisms, but be looking out and watching out for and observing the nuance that is created through these different components that we've now got the luxury for. And in simple terms, I've gained 12 hours a week. I did the maths on this. I gained 12 hours a week.
From not commuting.
Not commuting and not moving between meetings.
Yeah.
Because the onus was, for whatever reason, our meter bounced between offices in London and to go see people. So when you add that in to the commute time, we've all got my time back, not just me, but those that I work with. We've got that back now.
Yeah, wonderful. But what I'm hearing is definitely good advice to set up that sense of belonging in the beginning, or regularly through checking in person, and then having moments where we're online. Absolutely. So for teams out there, it could be once a week that you meet physically for a cup of tea, or for a half a day, or for being in the same physical space to resonate together. And then the rest of the week, it doesn't matter. Because I know a lot of leaders out there are probably thinking, well, I don't want to lose the good bits of the in-person and the good bits of the hybrid as well. But how do they manage that? So a bit of structure.
And I think you've got to pay attention to the different personality preferences and value preferences of people. So, for example, someone who's very high on aesthetics is going to want to go into a lovely environment. They're going to need a view. I'm quite high on aesthetics. So for me, if I'm going to come into town now, put me on a top floor, give me a view, give me space, make it a nice environment. Let's have tea and coffee or donuts, or whatever. Someone else is very low on aesthetics, won't mind being in the basement. Won't care what's on the walls. They'll get in. It's about being there. It's not about their environment. So and that's just one facet of experience. So actually understanding those things as a team and working that out is really, really important. And I definitely don't think that companies and teams are doing that very well at the moment. They're not taking the time to work out what works.
And what people want, I guess, too, as you said, aesthetically, or for structure and scheduling and time and things like that.
And people, it is absolutely true that people stay in a job longer because of their line manager. What is the relationship like with that line manager? And also, what variety do they have to their experience? So how do we create variety and interest for people, and how do we use the different mechanisms to do that are at our disposal now?
Wonderful. I'd love to ask you too. So we have, as a preferred partner, I know that you use the vital signs assessment that we have. And for those who are perhaps less familiar, here's our vital signs model. But you've used this quite extensively. When we had a chat before this moment now, you mentioned maybe, I wanted to ask you if there's any insights, especially around this term of belonging and trust, of course, at the center of that, and teams, as teamwork is one of the drivers there.
Yes, well, I've used this tool to measure the self-perception of each team member of their team's health and functioning a number of times over the years. And I've also used it before and after doing work. So you can measure each of those aspects on the diagram, and then you can do some work with the team. And my work was often focusing on building the ability for the team to practice their emotional intelligence. And what I was able to prove, and actually this was part of my thesis for my master's, able to prove that if you work on the emotional intelligence of the team, they work on their own issues. So you don't have to work directly on motivation. You don't have to work directly on change. If you work on their EQ, they can work on that themselves. So I was able to prove that was true. But I think what's really valuable about a tool like the vital signs is it gives you a framework and a language for the teams to talk about. And they can then be connected on the topics that matter. So, for example, if trust scores very low in that team, well, we've got to work on that first. There's
Mm.
no point in trying to work on change or execution unless
Mhm.
we've got trust in place.
Yeah.
We've got quite high trust, but something else is quite low. Well,
Mhm.
actually, we can use the trust we've got to
Mhm.
help us work on something else. So
Mm.
I'm quite data centric as a professional, and I appreciate using data to pique people's curiosity, to give them something to get more curious about. And I
Mm.
think the vital signs tool for teams is a very accessible
Mhm.
way to do that for a team.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. So, yeah, I put it up again there if people
Yeah,
want to find out more. Actually, I put up a different banner. I'm playing with my banners here,
go
but I
for
have
it.
one just to show that where if people want to learn more about the vital signs model, but and it gives you a richness of data. So you've used it with teams, and I guess too, there's the leadership aspect as well as the organizational aspect. And what I know of the tool is that it really looks at culture and climate, and that's something that we talked earlier about, culture and climate within organizations as well. So have you seen anything in the last little while around that, especially as it pertains to belonging?
Well, I'm taking your first point about the leader. If if I can get permission to do the vital signs on the leader, which is a 360, I would always do that, because the leader is either a brake or an accelerator for
Hmm.
the performance of the team. And
Hmm.
so we have to get that right. We have to attend to that.
Hmm.
And so I think it is valuable to do a 360 on the leader at the same time. That would be the first point. The second point about culture, I guess well, for me, culture is the way we do it. It's the way we do it around here.
Hmm.
It's the beliefs that drive our behavior and the assumptions, some of which are limiting, that drive our
Hmm.
beliefs, that drive our behavior.
Hmm.
And so you can't really work on a team unless you're going to get the assumptions and beliefs out on the table and
Mm.
say, let's have an objective look at these.
Mhm.
So I would always advocate for getting those out.
Mm.
And personal values, because
Mm.
um, when you get to conflict in team, and conflict when it doesn't go well can look like the opposite of belonging. It can
Mhm.
look like ejection, if you know what I mean.
Mhm. Mhm.
But often conflict, when it doesn't feel good, is a value clash.
Mm.
It's values at loggerheads, and you can have the same value and still be clashing, because you're interpreting that the meaning behind that in different ways.
Yeah.
So really revealing that helps teams belong, actually. It helps teams accept each other. If I know what's important to you, I can
Yeah.
honor it.
Yeah.
If you know what's important to me, you can
Yeah.
understand it,
Yeah.
and together we can be more empathetic towards each other,
Mhm.
because we can embrace those needs
Mm.
and see how they play out. Because the other thing about teams is they've got work to do. They've
Mhm.
got decisions to make. They've got projects and programs to implement. So how do
Mm.
we get the day job done
Yeah.
whilst holding these very powerful dynamics
Yeah.
lightly but meaningfully for
Mhm.
us? So I would say that drives belonging. But
Mm.
it's scary when you go in, because you don't go in knowing a lot. When you
Yeah.
start the work of the team, you don't go in knowing a lot.
Mhm.
So you've
And
got
you
to,
have to be vulnerable, to
yeah,
use that word again.
you've got to be okay with not knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's really interesting. And as you say, if we're talking about values and we're talking about understanding operating systems, then having that, as you said at the beginning, stepping back and knowing who you are as a person. And where do you want to belong? How do you belong? What are your values? What's driving you in there for a culture add? How can I add to this culture rather than fitting in, as you said too? Some really lovely connections, then sort of circling right back, as it really starts with our own awareness, being intentional and being purposeful, which is a different model from 6 seconds. But three great words to think about when it comes to how do we show up for others, and what can we do about that?
And I think touching on, and I know we don't have the time for this to go into detail, but the 6 seconds model around the competencies of emotional intelligence, I'm sure that belonging relates to optimism and intrinsic motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we are feeling optimistic, if we are motivated from within, I think it's going to be easier to belong in a
Mm,
group, in a team.
yeah.
And probably when we're low, when we're more pessimistic, when we're more down, I think it's harder to belong to ourselves. Um,
Mm,
so I think those aspects of EQ are really important
mm,
when we do that work.
yeah.
Our inner
Yeah.
motivation and
Yeah.
our ability to find optimism.
Yeah. And especially in this world of crises, polarization, and isolation. So, as you say, we're in the middle of COVID still. We're not through it, and the world is changing before our eyes. Easy to be pessimistic. So, easier, well, not easier, but an option, as you mentioned, is to use your EQ. So,
I think
are there any other, there we
it's
go.
the
Yes,
only thing, it's the only thing we've got in a way,
it's
because
true. Yeah. Yeah.
it's navigating and exploring the emotions that we're experiencing in the moment
Hmm.
and working out the message
Mm,
from those, and what do I do now?
mm,
So I think that they're one of the same. You cannot
mm.
do our work.
Yeah.
You can't make decisions without engaging in your emotional data.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. So
it's
you
a
have an option then to create a sense of belonging in a team by bringing your emotional intelligence. And as you said, optimism being maybe one of the key competencies that we've got around that as well. To be hopeful, to know that I can contribute in a way that's meaningful to this team.
yes, and we definitely don't have time now, but if we ever wanted to do one on optimism,
Yeah.
there is a there is a very rich um, opportunity to understand optimism
Hmm.
more, and
Yeah.
not to see it as this big thing. Oh my
Yeah.
God, you know, we can
Yeah.
break it down and examine it in detail.
In detail. Wonderful. Well, before we finish up, do you have any other, I guess, recommendations or any other thoughts, final words around our topic of today being belonging in teams?
I think we have to get curious.
Mm,
I don't think we can force it on others.
yeah,
Belong, sort it out. You know,
yeah,
we need, I'm going to put it on a slide.
yeah,
We're gonna have a belonging coffee morning.
yeah.
Uh, I just don't think that works. I think we have to get curious about what it means and what is it, what do we get by feeling that? It's a feeling
Mm,
at the end of the day. If I
mm,
feel I belong here, what do I
mhm,
get from that? What do you get from that? Why
mm,
is it a good goal?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm much less pessimistic about the future. You know,
Hmm.
in the middle of life. So
Mm,
if it
yeah,
wasn't what we've got now, it would be something else. So well,
yeah. That's
let's
true.
keep going and let's bank the good bits.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone in my church where I belong, where I do some singing, said, we just go from one problem to the next. But as you said, then we can be pessimistic about that, or we can be filled with creating a feeling of optimism around that to go, right, we're in the middle of our lives and this is good. Yeah. Wonderful, Marina. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing some time with us today on this LinkedIn Live. And I'd like to share but how can people connect with you finally as we go towards ending today?
So I'm on LinkedIn and I'm Marina Lumley. So more than happy for anyone to connect with me on LinkedIn, or
Hmm.
my email address is there, marina@greengrassconsulting.com, if you want
Wonderful.
to ask me any particular questions. But yes, it's an interesting topic, and it's been a pleasure to talk with you today, David.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on as our first preferred partner on this channel as well. So
I
this is
went first. Great. I like it.
lovely. So thanks for making the time as well. And maybe another time we can invite you back and some others of our preferred partner network around Europe and have a bit more of a discussion or a panel discussion on another topic as well.
Yeah.
So. But for those who would like, feel free. We have our EQ cafes that are running regularly around the globe, but certainly in Europe as well. And if you want to find out more about emotional intelligence, as Marina said, it's www.6seconds.org is where the organization we're both a part of. So whether it's your first time visiting us here on LinkedIn today, or you're a regular, as some of those who have been commenting today are, we welcome you and we thank you for joining us. So Marina, it's been lovely to have you on, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.